The city was supposed to fall in 13 minutes. That was the estimate, calculated by the alien fleet with terrifying precision. Before the first beam of searing blue light cut through the skyline like a surgeon's scalpel. In that moment, time itself seemed to fracture. Sirens wailed, drowning beneath the low hum of ships so massive their shadows swallowed entire districts. Civilians stampeded through choking smoke, their screams muffled by the hiss of burning steel. It was supposed to be a clean extermination. The Kerr Dominion never liked fighting up close. They preferred surgical strikes from orbit, erasing resistance before it could form. But this time, something was wrong. Sergeant Cullen crouched behind the rusted hull of an overturned transport, pulse rifle trembling in his hands as he watched them descend. The Kerr were sleek nightmares, 8-foot-tall armored creatures with armor that shimmered like oil on water, helmets without eyes. Their precision terrified him, but something else made his stomach turn. They were hesitating. "There, hold in position," muttered Corporal Diaz over comms, voice thin with disbelief. Colin peeked out from cover. Sure enough, the enemy advance had stalled. Entire squads stood at the edge of a shattered boulevard, scanning rooftops, their weapons humming quietly. The air between them shimmered as if reality itself recoiled from their presence. And then, without warning, they withdrew. The aliens began a slow, synchronized retreat, their towering silhouettes fading into smoke. Their ships, which had hovered like vultures over the ruins, pivoted skyward, streaking toward the upper atmosphere. Silence fell, unnatural, suffocating. Kellen staggered out from cover, boots crunching over glass and charred debris. His squad emerged behind him, rifles raised but useless now. "They left," Diaz whispered, breaking the silence. The word echoed like a prayer. Across the city, surviving soldiers and civilians peeked from shelters, stunned. Humanity had never driven the Kerr from a battlefield until now. Hours later, the surviving command center crackled with panicked transmissions. Analysts tried to rationalize the withdrawal. Tactical regrouping, resource allocation, atmospheric instability. None of it explained why the Kerr had stared directly at the Terran lines and turned back. In a dimly lit corner of the command post, war correspondent Marin Solis watched feeds of burning streets and abandoned alien drop pods. Her voice trembled as she recorded a broadcast that would echo across the system. Day 92 of the Kerr War. For the first time since their arrival, they've pulled back. The strongest military in the galaxy blinked first. Something scared them, soldiers whispered in the ruins that night. They weren't sure if they had survived a miracle or stepped into something far worse. Somewhere above the clouds, on a flagship bristling with alien technology, a Kerr commander stared at battlefield footage. The humans' faces played in slow motion, gritted teeth, bloodied brows, wild eyes full of fire. He shuddered and turned away. "We cannot fight them like this," he hissed in his native tongue. "Not face to face." The first invasion. The first invasion was not a war. It was a massacre with schedules. The Kerr Dominion arrived in silence, their ships sliding from hyperspace like predators gliding beneath dark water. There was no warning, no declaration, no demand. Cities vanished before alarms could sound, their destruction choreographed with surgical precision. From orbit, the Kerr fired beams of blue-white energy that melted skyscrapers like wax and vaporized military installations in seconds. By the time Terran Command confirmed what was happening, 7 continents were already burning. In those first days, humans didn't fight back. They ran. News footage from surviving satellites showed streams of civilians fleeing through empty streets as towering dropships descended, releasing armored giants with skin the color of stone. The Cure moved like a single organism, each soldier an extension of a hive mind that calculated every step. They swept through neighborhoods without hesitation, erasing resistance before it could form. Entire battalions vanished into smoldering ruins. Private recordings smuggled off-world revealed the terror. A mother clutching her child, whispering prayers as a shadow passed over their window. A soldier's shaky helmet cam showing comrades being lifted into the air by an unseen force before their bodies collapsed in a flash of light. To the Cur, Earth was not a battlefield. It was a specimen jar. Humanity was an infestation, and they were the exterminators. Terran Command scrambled to mount a defense, but Earth's greatest weapons barely scratched Cur shields. Fighter jets fell from the sky like burning birds. Tanks crumbled under precision strikes from orbit. Even nuclear weapons detonated over uninhabited zones in a desperate attempt to halt their advance were shrugged off by their shimmering atmospheric barriers. Within a week, a third of humanity's population centers were abandoned or reduced to ash. Yet, even in the chaos, patterns emerged that no one understood. The Cure didn't occupy cities. They erased infrastructure, hunted leaders, destroyed factories, but then moved on, leaving streets full of corpses and rubble behind. They didn't even loot. It was as if they didn't want Earth. They wanted something gone. Among the survivors, myths began to spread. Some whispered the Cure weren't an empire, but a cleansing force, purging contaminants from the galaxy. Others swore they were afraid of something buried in humanity's DNA, something primitive that their technology couldn't predict. These were just whispers then, born of terror and exhaustion. But in every city the Cur abandoned, there was something they left behind. Silence, a silence so heavy it crushed hope. At the ruins of Shanghai, a resistance scout team found an alien emblem etched into the street, glowing faintly even days later. A sigil no human could decipher. The message was clear enough, though. This is where they started hunting us. In the months that followed, humans would learn to fight back. Not with superior firepower, but with unpredictability, with chaos, with something no alien war council could chart. And in their first defeat, the Cure would come to fear humanity's greatest weapon, desperation. The resistance emerges. They called her Captain Elena Varga, though no official rank had ever been pinned to her jacket. She'd been an engineer once, designing orbital stations that now floated as burned-out hulks in low Earth orbit. When the Cure shattered her city, she crawled out from the rubble with a broken arm, a salvaged sidearm, and an unshakable rage. By the time military command had collapsed into fractured regional councils, Elena had already carved her own legend. Her name was whispered through resistance channels, carried by soldiers and scavengers alike. The woman who made the Cure bleed. In the scorched forests of the former Czech Republic, Elena's ragtag squad crouched in the ruins of a farmhouse, rain pelting down as they wired explosives to what used to be a tractor. The machine was gutted now, its frame bristling with homemade rockets, its engine stripped to power a crude electromagnetic pulse. "You sure this thing won't kill us first?" muttered Rook, her medic and closest ally, his face streaked with mud. "If it does," Elena said, tightening a bolt with a bloody wrench, "then it's doing its job." They had no satellites, no drones, and no command chain worth trusting. What they did have was ingenuity, human ingenuity, the kind born not in laboratories, but in the rubble of homes and schools, in the hands of desperate mechanics and farmers who refused to kneel. They turned abandoned trucks into mine layers, water towers into sniper nests, and city sewers into labyrinthine kill zones. The Kerr had expected resistance, but not like this. Their enemy didn't fight for territory. They fought for vengeance. The Dominion was used to precise strategies and predictable warfare. Humans were neither. They'd turn a crater into a trap, a school bus into a bomb. They'd fight with knives when guns ran dry and throw themselves at armored behemoths with explosives strapped to their chests. The Kerr had no concept for soldiers who saw death as a tool, not a fear. One night, Eleanor's team executed what became known as the Oshridge Ambush. They lured a Kerr ground column into a narrow canyon where they'd rigged every cliff face with salvaged explosives. When the alien patrol reached the choke point, Eleanor detonated the charges, burying half the squad under an avalanche of stone. The rest were picked off in close quarters combat by men and women in scavenged armor, wielding weapons older than the war itself. That night, for the first time, resistance fighters brought back alien tech. Eleanor's squad dragged home armor plates, rifles, and a strange crystalline device pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The victory was small, but its effect was seismic. Across every refugee camp, whispers began to spread. The Kerr can be killed. In the Dominion's war councils, commanders analyzed the battle with unease. The humans' tactics defied probability models. They called them chaos agents, anomalies in their simulations. What they didn't understand was that chaos wasn't strategy for humans. It was survival. And survival was something humanity had perfected long before it reached the stars. A new battlefield. The war shifted when humanity learned to stop fighting on the Kerr's terms. The Dominion soldiers relied on flawless formations and battlefield control. Terrain was irrelevant to them because their technology turned every engagement into a simulation. But humans stopped fighting in cities and plains where Kerr ships had the advantage. They lured them instead into places no algorithm could predict. The broken, jagged heart of Earth itself. Elena Vaga's squad led the charge. They turned entire landscapes into weapons. In the rain-choked jungles of the Yucatan, their first major victory unfolded like a nightmare for the Dominion. Kerr dropships descended into thick fog, their energy scanners pinging wildly, but they detected nothing unusual. As their soldiers fanned out in formation, every step triggered chaos. Trees collapsed under their own weight, vines strung with metal scrap and explosives whipped through the air, and the ground itself swallowed them as sinkholes collapsed in precise sequences. The battle lasted 4 minutes. Not a single human was seen. The Kerr soldiers who survived returned shaking, their armor scorched, their ranks halved. Commanders reviewed the footage, confused by the ingenuity. How had humans known exactly where to attack? What scanners had they used? They didn't understand that humans didn't need scanners. They had generations of hunters, farmers, and engineers who understood their land better than any machine. It wasn't just jungles. Elena's resistance coordinated with scattered cells across the globe to make every biome a death trap. In the Arctic wastes, soldiers turned abandoned oil rigs into electromagnetic pylons that fried alien equipment. In desert badlands, they lured enemy patrols into narrow canyons lined with solar mirrors, blinding even Kerr optics. They made the world itself their ally, reshaping Earth into an unpredictable labyrinth. The Kerr stopped advancing on foot. Their sleek drop pods became rare, replaced by distant orbital strikes that flattened terrain from above. It was a safer tactic, but less precise, and every shift in strategy betrayed something critical: fear. That fear was amplified by stories, rumors deliberately seeded by resistance cells, tales of ghost fighters who could vanish into smoke, berserkers who fought with supernatural fury, and humans who poisoned rivers with pathogens invisible to Kerr medics spread through alien ranks. Soldiers began hesitating in their marches, glancing over their shoulders as if expecting an ambush. Rook, still limping from injuries sustained during the Ashridge ambush, stood on a ridge overlooking a destroyed Kerr convoy. His voice cracked through static as he whispered into comms, "They are scared of us." Eleanor stared down at the burning wreckage, her jaw tight. "Good," she said. "Let them be." In Dominion command chambers light years away, holographic displays of Earth flickered with red zones, territories no longer deemed secure. Strategists shifted nervously. For the first time, the thought crept into their minds that humans weren't prey. They were predators in their own right, and predators had just learned to hunt. The turning point. The breakthrough didn't come from a battlefield, but from a stolen signal. In the ruins of Johannesburg, a scavenger named Imani crawled through shattered buildings, scavenging alien tech to trade for food. That's when she stumbled upon an abandoned Kerr relay node, an angular tower of obsidian metal humming faintly. Its systems were alien, but its design was elegant, almost organic. Against all odds, Imani managed to pull its core drive. She smuggled it through resistance checkpoints until it landed in Elena Varga's hands. Engineers worked for weeks to crack the encryption. They expected schematics, troop positions, or supply chains. What they found instead was a record of fear. The drive contained combat telemetry captured by Kerr soldiers, neural recordings of their own soldiers' emotional states during engagements. Every time a Kerr warrior was killed, the network felt it. Not just data, but terror. For the first time, humanity understood why the Kerr hesitated to fight on the ground. They weren't just a collective intelligence. They were empathically linked. Every scream, every jolt of pain, every flash of panic reverberated through their ranks like ripples in water. When humans fought recklessly, throwing themselves into close quarters battles, the shock of those encounters echoed through the entire Dominion. The Kerr weren't built for this. Their entire civilization thrived on order, symmetry, and predictability. Humanity was chaos incarnate, and every death a human inflicted was a psychic wound carved into their hive mind. In a dim underground command center beneath a collapsed railway station, Eleanor watched a projection of alien telemetry play across the cracked walls. The holographic feed pulsed red with fear signals. "They feel everything," whispered Rook, leaning heavily on a cane. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with resolve. "They feel us," Elena said softly, her hand clenched around a pistol grip, as if testing its weight. "We don't have to just fight them. We can break them." The Resistance's tactics shifted overnight. Instead of simply ambushing patrols, they staged psychological strikes. Holographic decoys of human warriors were projected into Kerr patrol zones, paired with automated sound cannons, blaring screams and battle cries. Guerrilla fighters painted sigils of red hands and skulls on walls, symbols designed to unsettle alien troops. They turned every shadow, every flicker of movement, into a psychological weapon. The effect was immediate. Alien soldiers began retreating from previously secure sectors, leaving behind weapons and equipment. Satellite footage showed Kerr formations faltering mid-march, their once perfect lines scattering. A Dominion commander reportedly ordered his troops to avoid all human cities entirely, citing psychological contamination. For the first time since the war began, humanity had not only slowed the invasion, but forced the enemy to change strategy. In whispered circles, resistance leaders dared to hope. Maybe, just maybe, Earth wasn't lost, but victory has a price. And as humanity turned fear into a weapon, they drew the attention of someone far above the battlefield. A Kerr strategist who would stop at nothing to erase the species that had learned to terrify gods. The betrayal. The transmission came at midnight. Elena was hunched over a flickering console, eyes gritty from days without rest. When Rook's voice cracked through the static. "Captain, you need to see this." His tone carried a weight she'd never heard before. Moments later, she was in the command room, staring at an encrypted feed intercepted from Terran Command. On screen was General Marcus Hale, one of Earth's highest-ranking military leaders, seated in a dim room, his face illuminated by a soft, unnatural glow. Across from him, an alien silhouette pulsed faintly in blues and greens. Hale's voice was calm, deliberate. "If we deliver your targets, you'll leave the civilian sectors untouched." The alien's reply was garbled, translated only partially by the software. "Compliance, assured." Elena felt her stomach twist. The general was negotiating with the enemy, offering up coordinates of resistance strongholds in exchange for a ceasefire over select cities. The man who was supposed to defend humanity had bartered its heart away. Hours later, the betrayal unfolded in fire. Elena's squad was camped near a ruined hydroelectric station, preparing to sabotage a Kerr relay hub. When the sky erupted with light, precision orbital strikes rained down, vaporizing entire sectors in surgical bursts. Elena screamed into her comms, ordering retreat, but their escape routes collapsed under explosions. Rook was thrown by the shockwave of a blast, his body slamming against a steel beam. Blood streamed down his face as Elena dragged him behind cover, her ears ringing. "Get up, Rook. Stay with me," she shouted, her voice drowned by the roar of alien engines above. He coughed, forcing a grim smile. "Guess. They found us," he rasped. By dawn, her squad was decimated. Survivors limped through ash-choked air, their eyes hollow, clutching what weapons they could salvage. The Kerr had struck with perfect intelligence. Every hidden cache, every escape tunnel mapped. The betrayal had cost them hundreds of fighters. In a shattered bunker beneath what remained of the hydro station, Elena stared at a map of glowing red craters, her people's graves. The room stank of smoke and blood. Rook lay nearby, unconscious but alive, his breathing shallow. "They sold us out," she whispered, her fists trembling. Words spread quickly. Hale's voice was no longer one of authority, but of treachery. Across resistance networks, fighters cursed his name and vowed vengeance, not just against the Kerr, but against any leader willing to trade lives for survival. That night, Elena made a decision that would change the war. She burned her uniform, replacing it with scavenged armor painted black. Her squad, once a tactical strike team, became something more dangerous. Predators operating outside any chain of command. They swore no allegiance to politicians or generals, only to humanity's survival. And in the darkness, they plotted their next move. If the Dominion thought betrayal would crush them, they were wrong. It only sharpened their resolve. But unknown to Elena, the Kerr were watching her closely now. Her name whispered like a warning through their ranks. They weren't just hunting her, they feared her. The Ghost Offensive. They struck at night, when the Kerr's scanners struggled with atmospheric interference and their soldiers relied on the soft glow of their armor to navigate terrain. Elena's newly reborn squad didn't fight like soldiers anymore. They moved like phantoms. They stripped enemy tech from battlefields, learning to reverse engineer Kerr optics and hijack their drones. With the betrayal still fresh in her veins, Elena became ruthless. Each strike wasn't just an attack, it was a message. The first major operation was codenamed Spectre. In the ruins of Nairobi's financial district, Kerr patrols moved cautiously between skyscraper skeletons, their armor reflecting moonlight like shifting water. Suddenly, every street lamp flickered out. The air filled with whispers, not human voices, but distorted echoes, recordings played through hacked alien comms. Panic rippled through their ranks as the ground beneath them erupted in white-hot fire. Elena's team had planted electromagnetic mines in abandoned tram tunnels, rigging them to detonate in sequence. The blast didn't just destroy their machines, it scrambled their neural links. Kerr soldiers collapsed mid-step, clawing at their helmets as if trying to rip out the screams echoing through their minds. Within minutes, a full platoon was annihilated, and the survivors staggered into the shadows, firing wildly at ghosts that weren't there. The ghost offensive spread like wildfire. Across continents, resistance cells adopted Elena's brutal tactics. They created decoys out of mannequins, outfitted with heat emitters to confuse scanners. They deployed automated sniper drones hidden in rubble, programmed to fire in chaotic patterns that mimicked human unpredictability. They hacked Kerr drop pods mid-flight, rerouting them to crash into empty wastelands. And always, they left messages, crimson symbols daubed on shattered walls, skulls etched into pavement with alien plasma cutters, glowing graffiti visible even from orbit. The Kerr began referring to human fighters as the Black Eyes, a term born from combat reports describing their unnerving expressions, wide, unblinking, full of fury. From orbit, Dominion tacticians debated whether to escalate with full-scale annihilation strikes, but fear had already fractured their discipline. Ground forces refused deployment orders. Some soldiers went rogue, abandoning their posts entirely. One intercepted transmission captured a panicked voice, alien words crackling through static. "We are not trained for this. They do not fear death. They are contagious." In the shadows of a gutted hospital, Elena crouched beside Rook, who was recovering but still too weak to fight. "They're breaking," she whispered, watching a drone feed of panicked Kerr soldiers retreating. Rook managed a grin. "Guess we're winning, huh?" Elena's gaze was cold. "No," she murmured. "We're teaching them to hate us. That's different." And hatred was dangerous, because for every Kerr soldier who fled, there was someone higher in their hierarchy taking note, someone who would not run, who would see this chaos as a challenge. And when that challenge came, the battlefield itself would tremble. The revelation. The Kerr scientist's hands trembled as the restraints clicked around his wrists. His armor had been stripped, leaving his gray, sinewy form exposed under flickering lights. Elena studied him from across the interrogation chamber. A bunker carved into a subway tunnel, lined with scavenged equipment and screens flickering with alien code. Rook stood nearby, still pale from his injuries, watching the alien's every twitch. This wasn't just another prisoner. This was Dralith, one of the Dominion's senior genetic engineers, captured during a daring raid that cost 3 lives and nearly Elena's own. The scientist's capture sent shockwaves through the resistance network. The hope was that he would know something, anything, that could give humanity an edge beyond terror tactics. At first, Dralith was silent. He sat perfectly still, his 4-fingered hands folded neatly in front of him, his obsidian black eyes unblinking. The only sound in the room was the low hum of a translator unit, Then finally, in a voice smooth and cold, he spoke. You burn yourselves to strike us. You cut your own flesh to wound. You are not species. You are a disease. Rook leaned forward, anger flashing in his eyes. Call us whatever you want. But why won't you fight us face to face anymore? The alien turned his gaze on Rook, and for a moment, Eleanor thought she saw something flicker there. Fear, maybe even shame. Because every time we kill you, Droleth whispered, we die a little too. Slowly, piece by piece, the truth came out. The cure were not individuals, not in the way humans understood individuality. Every soldier was born from a clone vat, their minds tethered by a psychic network that allowed them to operate with flawless precision. Emotions, pain, and fear weren't isolated experiences. They were broadcast through their entire collective. One soldier's terror could ripple through 100 minds. The brutality of human combat wasn't just physical, it was psychic. Every charge into enemy fire, every desperate scream of a dying fighter, every flash of rage carved scars into the Kur's collective consciousness. We are bred to predict, Droleth admitted, his voice faltering as Eleanor played back footage of Kurd troops retreating from human traps. Every simulation accounted for strength, technology, tactics. None accounted for. He paused, searching for a word. Madness. You do not fight to win. You fight because you refuse to stop breathing. Even when logic says you should already be dead. Eleanor felt a chill crawl up her spine. So you fear us because we're unpredictable? No, Droleth said softly. We fear you because when one of you dies, you take a piece of us with you. And when one of us dies, you feel nothing. The bunker fell silent. The revelation explained everything. The hesitations, the sudden retreats, the orbital strikes that replaced ground assaults. Humanity wasn't just resisting. They were infecting their enemy with their own chaos. Eleanor leaned in, her voice like steel. Then tell your commanders something for me. We're just getting started. The face-to-face meeting. The neutral station floated in the dark void like a scarred monument. Its hull pitted from centuries of micrometeorite strikes. It wasn't built for comfort or politics. It was a relic of an ancient mining colony, now repurposed as a rare negotiation site. For the first time since the invasion began, human and Kur leaders would meet without the crosshairs of rifles between them. Elena Varga stepped off the shuttle, flanked by 2 resistance fighters, her black painted armor still scorched from their last skirmish. She'd insisted on wearing it. Let them see her as she was, a soldier, not a diplomat. Around her, the airlock chamber hummed with automated defenses, scanning every life form that passed. Across the chamber, a door hissed open. The Kur delegation entered. They were taller than Eleanor imagined, sleek figures in iridescent armor, their movements unnervingly synchronized. At their center was a single figure draped in a mantle of glowing threads, a symbol of high command. His helmet retracted, revealing a face with angular features, eyes black as obsidian, and an expression that, to her surprise, looked tired. Commander Varga, the translator device said, its voice mechanical but steady. I am Vail Takor, war strategist of the Dominion. His gaze lingered on her armor, the scars and dents telling stories his intelligence files likely couldn't. Elena's jaw tightened. You've killed billions, she said. Why call for talks now? Vail tilted his head, his voice calm, almost mournful. Because we cannot fight you this way. The words echoed in the chamber. Eleanor felt her pulse spike, but she didn't let it show. You mean you're losing? The strategist didn't flinch. We do not fear death. We fear what you are. You fight with no rhythm. No honor codes, no constraints. You turn cities into weapons. You sacrifice yourselves without hesitation. Every battle with you is like staring into a star that burns without reason. It changes us. Eleanor's breath hitched. There was no malice in his tone, only something raw and honest. He stepped closer, his mantle shimmering faintly. We see your species as too alive, he said softly. Every death you face is personal. Every strike you make is vicious. We are bred for symmetry. You are born of chaos. You infect us with it. Silence filled the chamber. Behind her visor, Eleanor's expression hardened. We're fighting to exist. You're fighting to erase us. Don't mistake survival for savagery. Voil's gaze lowered. Perhaps it is both. For a moment, neither side moved. Soldiers on both ends gripped their weapons tighter. The atmosphere was thick with mistrust and something else, a reluctant respect. Then Vial spoke again, his voice heavy. We will withdraw. Not because you are stronger, but because we cannot endure this war any longer. We will not fight you face to face again. The Dominion will not return. For now, Eleanor's fingers curled into fists. If you ever do, she said coldly, you'd better pray you're ready. And just like that, the meeting was over. But Vile's words echoed long after she left the station. A warning disguised as surrender, resolution and open loop. Years passed, but the scars of the war never faded. Earth was a planet of ghosts now. Cities rebuilt over skeletons of steel and glass. Forests regrowing over battlefields where alien bones still lay buried. Humanity survived, but survival carried a cost. Soldiers like Elena Varga walked among the living like shadows, carrying the weight of a victory no one truly celebrated. There were parades, speeches, monuments carved from wreckage. But when Eleanor looked up at the sky at night, she didn't see peace. She saw stars filled with predators who had learned to fear her species. In the rebuilt capital of Geneva, the Council of Nations held its first meeting in decades. Eleanor attended as an observer, standing at the back in plain clothes, her armor left behind. Politicians spoke in hopeful tones about reconstruction and alliances, about reaching out to the galaxy again. Eleanor's mind drifted back to Vial Takor's words, "We will not fight you face to face again." She didn't hear surrender in that voice. She heard a warning. On the far side of the galaxy, Kerr space was silent. Scouts reported abandoned outposts. Fleets recalled a sudden absence of their presence on the borders. Some believed the Dominion had collapsed. Others thought they were simply licking their wounds. Eleanor didn't trust either theory. The Kjör were too precise, too disciplined. They didn't retreat out of weakness. They retreated to adapt. One night, while monitoring encrypted transmissions for the resistance, Eleanor intercepted something strange. It wasn't a message, but a data stream, heavily encrypted. The fragments she could decipher chilled her. Schematics of armored forms, unlike anything she'd seen before. Warriors with pale, emotionless faces and empty, glassy eyes. She dug deeper and found references to a project called Nullborn, a weapon designed not to fight with fear, but without it. The footage attached was worse. A dimly lit Kerr facility, filled with tanks of green fluid. Inside, each floated a soldier, still and serene, their neural signatures flat lines. No empathy, no fear, no chaos to infect. Eleanor sat in silence for a long time, staring at the screen. Rook, now fully recovered, but haunted like the rest of them, entered the room. "What is it?" he asked softly. "They're coming back," Elena said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were steel. "Thought they were done with us. They are. With us," she gestured to the screen, to the rows of lifeless soldiers in their glass prisons. "But this isn't them anymore. Outside, fireworks exploded over Geneva as humanity celebrated another year of freedom. Eleanor switched off the monitor and stood at the window, her reflection pale against the glowing skyline. "They won't fight us face to face," she murmured, her voice carrying only to herself. "Not until they've become something that feels nothing at all." In the darkness beyond the stars, somewhere deep in Kerr space, the first null-born soldier opened its eyes.